Hi, I'm Tom with the Binky Brothers, and you are watching the Dirty Binky Video Blog and Podcast. Today's episode 3, is going to be about the clouds of faith, more specifically the cloud of conformity. I'm going to go ahead and start off and give you guys a little bit of a definition of what the clouds of faith are. A while back I did some writing on personal perspectives and individual spirituality, and among those volumes was a volume entitled The Clouds of Faith. And within the volumes are many different identified clouds of faith. To name a few, the cloud of conformity, the cloud of conviction, and the cloud of mistranslation and misrepresentation. Today we are going to be focusing on the cloud of conformity. I will be more specifically speaking on the concept of the kingdom of heaven and its implications of tyranny. First off, I might as well start off by saying it's maintained through many established religions that there is a kingdom in which we should all strive to enter through some spiritual pursuit of God. And in this kingdom is your guaranteed right to happiness for your servitude to God and for the things that you did in service to God in your lifetime. Well, at first I must point out that the concept of a kingdom is tyrannical in itself, in that a more enlightened concept might be the democracy of heaven, or the socialist regime of heaven, or communist regime of heaven. Although socialism and communism has such a harsh connotation nowadays that I am very reluctant to use those words. But if you consider the concept of religion, that's truly what they are. Socialist and communist, in that if you have something and somebody's in need, it is almost a sin, or it's almost wrong of you in the eyes of God to not sacrifice that which you do not need to someone who does need. But I'm getting off topic. We're going to hop back in on the concept of the kingdom here. I will say that I understand where the concept came from. At the time that most of the popular religions of our days were being established, that was the popular form of government. Monarchy, hierarchy, you had your kings and queens, and it was easy for people to learn because they already knew it. They lived it every day. They had a king that they followed. They had the princes that they followed. So they could understand that God is king, Jesus is prince, and we follow their word. It's easy to understand. It's easy to conform to. And at the same time, it's a good promise. If you consider, like I said before, the state in which our civilization was at when these religions first surfaced, it was the medieval days. You had the bubonic plague. The life expectancy of people was minimal, and the life that they lived was dismal. And so a promise of something greater was, it was a godsend, so to speak. To play on words there, to have some form of escape, something better than the poverty and death and plague-stricken world that they lived in. And you can see how the concept of a kingdom of heaven, and how gaining passage to this kingdom and having all that you need and want in the afterlife could be very appealing. In fact, most people would be foolish to not entertain the idea. However, once you've entertained it, it's time to pass it away. As it says in the Bible, when I was a child, I was spanked as a child, and I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. I no longer believe in Santa Claus, I no longer believe in the Easter Bunny, and I no longer believe that I'm going to go to a kingdom of heaven when I die to serve a man who's, well, quite frankly, tried to destroy us more times than he's actually tried to help us. And that kind of ties into my concept of the Garden of Eden, which I will touch on here in just a few. I want to make sure that I've gotten to all my points on the kingdom of heaven and the clouds of conformity. Well, first I would like to state that in a kingdom, the idea is tyrannical itself. In a kingdom, your goal would be to rise as king, right? That's what everybody wants. They want to be king with the gold and the power and the money. Well, in the kingdom of heaven, that spots reserved for the immortal and therefore irreplaceable God. So your only real next goal would be Prince, which is the spot reserved by the Son of God, Jesus Christ. So truly, all you can hope for is to be a vassal in his court or a peasant on the outside of his gates. Your promise of something greater is thus, it's an empty promise. Essentially, your only real guarantee for a lifetime of servitude to God is an eternity of service to God in heaven. You're not guaranteed or promised anything more than that. Think about it. I'd like to step further on and speak about the story of the Garden of Eden and the Adam and Eve and the serpent. But before I do, I would like to point out that we're not going to talk about the snake as Lucifer. We're not going to call him Lucifer. Lucifer has a bad connotation, and we're going to get rid of that name. We're going to call him Enki. There was a great writer, Zecharia Sitchin. He wrote about the Garden of Eden, and he explains that serpent is actually more closely related to the Norse god Enki, the god of mischief. Those of you who aren't familiar with Norse mythology, Zecharia Sitchin has many books that speak about Enki in his theory of things and how he believes the being of Enki should be portrayed. But essentially, he strips the snake of the Lucifer title in order to better understand the whole story. So if we call the snake Enki, you got Enki, you got Adam and Eve, and you have God. These are the players in this story of the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. First, I would like to maybe point out, maybe ask, what is knowledge? Knowledge is power. That's what they say, right? It's true. The more you know, the more you're capable of. Why, then, was it God who refused to give us knowledge and not Lucifer? Why did Enki have to tempt us into understanding? Let me say this. If you really look at the story, all the serpent, Enki, Lucifer, all he tried to do was give us knowledge. He wanted us to understand. In Zecharia Sitchin's theories, he essentially wanted to give men equal footing with the gods. That was all he wanted to do. He didn't think it was fair that we were ignorant and that we were kept in the dark in this Garden of Eden. And yes, it may have been a utopia, but what's a utopia without freedom? And from what I understand, we wouldn't have been granted free will had Eve not been tempted to eat the fruit. So on one hand, you have Enki, who wishes us knowledge, who wishes us to be intelligent, to think on our own, to act on our own. On the other hand, you have God, who wishes to keep us ignorant, in the dark, and under his control. So, let me then ask, does the serpent not act more like God in this story? And doesn't God act more like the serpent in this story? I think so. That's why I've said it, and I'll say it again. Christians have it wrong. I truly believe if there is any merit, any credit whatsoever to Christianity, they have it wrong. I believe that the portrayal of God in the Garden of Eden is in fact the devil. And by listening to the devil, we would have kept ourselves ignorant and in the dark. But by following the serpent's lead, by wanting knowledge, by wanting to better ourselves, by wanting to be on the same level as the gods, we are being punished. It doesn't seem fair. We were given free will to do what we want to do. to do the things we see fit, to act how we see fit, then why should we have to conform to a religious superstition that was conjured by mortals anyway? I will suggest we don't, and we shouldn't. It's not productive. In fact, it's counterintuitive. And I would like to speak on that a little bit, the counterintuitiveness of heaven and the kingdom of heaven and going to heaven. I'd maintain that with the nature of the universe and the way that things, just the general way things are, that it is foolish and naive to hold souls, to hold these parcels of energy in one place, in a purgatory or in a heaven where they are maintained and controlled. To me, it makes more sense if you look at the Hindu religion and reincarnation, to allow these souls to relive life continuously, to continue to channel stimulation to whatever it is that makes physicality real. The collective consciousness, reality in itself, whatever you want to explain it. Quantum physicists call it reality in itself, and it is essentially the consciousness and awareness of everything, of itself and each other in the universe. This is something that Aspect touched on a little bit in his theory of non-locality. But to tie back into what I was saying, it's naive, it's ignorant, it's foolish to take these energy, these parcels, these packets of energy, these souls, and hold them in one place, when it's much more productive to recycle them through the system over and over again, like a user getting information from a computer. Cycle. That way, individual souls have the chance to influence physicality in multiple ways, multiple times, with multiple influences from different ideas, different concepts, and different backgrounds, coming from different environments with different brains evolved differently, and bodies and vessels that are evolved differently and have different abilities of questioning themselves and the nature of the universe, and all sorts of things like that. And as I said, to me, it just makes more sense to recycle those packets of energy and those souls than it does to simply send them off to a purgatory somewhere, to a heaven somewhere where they'll sit for all of eternity. It's lost energy. It's foolish and ignorant to assume that that's how anything would work. But I wanted to touch back down just for a few seconds on the concept of free will and how it ties into the cloud of conformity, as well as the kingdom of heaven. We've already talked about how the kingdom of heaven is, it was easy to understand. It was easy to conform to. People knew it. People could understand it. They lived it every day. It was easy for them to know. They could conform to it. Free will, speaking of conformity, was given to us by God, Enki, Lucifer, however you want to see it in the Bible. It was given to us one way or another. We were granted free will. However, we're only allowed to use that free will in the way that God sees fit. In that if we do something sinful or contradictory to what He views we should be doing, then we are insubordinate and must be punished. And this is very difficult for me to swallow, especially when the Bible says that all men were created in God's image. So is it safe to say that God is a rapist? God is a murderer? God is a thief? Because I've known rapists, I've known murderers, and I've known thieves, and they are very much human. Very much human. So if those humans were made in the image of God, what does that make God? What does that make your free will? Makes it nothing. It's absolutely nothing. Unless you are willing to cast aside the idea that you must conform, your free will means absolutely nothing. And it will continue to mean nothing until you can understand that free will isn't something that can be dictated. Can't be dictated by a president, it can't be dictated by your parents, and it can't be dictated by some overly protective, never freaking present father figure up in the sky. It can't be dictated by anyone if it's free will. Only you can dictate your own will. So that's my rant on the concept of free will, and we see how that ties into conformity, in that you are told that you are granted free will, and then you are told you must conform in order to please God, or in order to obtain His approval, to reach your higher state in heaven, or whatever it is that you wish to, whatever you strive for, whether it's heaven or reincarnation or whatever, depending on your religion. It's never going to be anything. Your free will never mean anything until you are willing to exercise it yourself and not let it be dictated by anyone, especially some invisible divine being in the sky who is very, very angry with us for whatever reason, eating the apple, whatever we did, floods, quakes, fires, everything. He just tried everything to destroy us. And it's our free will that's kept us here all this time. I sincerely believe that it's our ability to question Him that has gotten us this far. And I think that we, in order to improve ourselves as a civilization, must continue to question God and the concept of God and the concept of the kingdom of heaven. And we should always question when we are asked to conform to something. You should always question that. But I think I've said most of what I want to say about the kingdom of heaven and the Garden of Eden. Appreciate all of you tuning in to today's broadcast. I hope it met you well, and I hope that you plan on tuning in the future. From all of us here at the Binky Brothers and Dirty Binky Video Blog, thank you very much. And remember, religion, you can keep that, Dirty Binky.